Good evening. It's 7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Bailey, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Langness,
Present.
Commissioner Gerard,
Here.
Commissioner Keene, Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner Lee,
Here.
Commissioner Batty,
Here.
and Commissioner Black.
Here. Thank you, Bailey. I ask if you're able to please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair will look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I would ask that you guys consider adding an amendment to the agenda, adding an item between number 4 and 5 to add an open forum for members of the public to speak for items that are not on the agenda. I heard from a number of people that they want to speak to the Planning Commission tonight. If that would be all right with you.
I'd second that.
Is it okay with the
Works for me.
second?
I'll alter the second, too.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we will hold an open forum. Before we do that, though, I want to introduce the Planning Commission to Councilperson Bain, Mara. She will be our liaison from the City Council moving forward. And she will address us in the famous other category near the end of the meeting. So with that being said, we'll host the open forum. It's something we rarely do, so forgive me if I screw it up. We ask that you keep your comments to a couple minutes and tell us what you want to tell us. We don't have a sign-in sheet, so we'll just allow on courtesy, first come, first serve. We do need your name and address for the record, though. So, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Chair Gerard, if I could interject, I just want to get something clear that there was an incorrect notice in the April 24th Forest Lake Times for a public notice for a zoning text amendment for the small wireless cell facilities. That was it's kind of a shaggy dog story as far as incorrect. They failed it during 1 week, and then it was too late when we noticed, and then they put it again next week, and et cetera. So
the cell tower is not on the agenda?
Public hearing for the small wireless cell zoning text amendment.
We're also not covering the CUP for the Century Junior High, if you were interested in that issue. So now that we've cleared up all the stuff that's not going to be covered in tonight's meeting, anyone who wishes, please come up and address.
Sure. We'll be the first target. My name is Susan Young, 9950 199th Street North. I guess I'm just kind of shocked and amazed that we have a comprehensive plan amendment and a zoning map amendment on your agenda this evening. It appears clear to me from listening to council members that they do not appear interested in making any comp plan amendments or any zoning map amendments until after the comp plan process has been completed. So it's not so much an issue with y'all as it is I'm very surprised to see this because of the statements that have been made by the folks that you will forward your recommendations to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Moorhead, 943 Southeast 12th Avenue. And I'm just here to thank you, Planning Commission members, for doing what the community wanted done. The change in the zoning, you made it very clear in your 2 votes that you had done your homework, your due diligence, and you didn't find any reason to not support that, which would have been certainly what would put you into agreement with 90% of the people that I talked to. And it breaks my heart to think that twice you came up and did your homework and and did it right. And people that were sitting in the audience, I was one of them. If I'd had a question, I would have probably tried to ask it that night, or it may be before the meeting, rather than wait until after the meeting and then say you messed up. You know, that's just not fair. If you want to talk to people, you should do it before they vote and not throw them under the bus afterwards. So I just want to represent an awful lot of people that I've talked to that are very, very thankful that you're sitting here and you're trying to do what's right. So, thank you.
Time's up. Oh, no.
And a better story.
Mr. Chairman, Commission members, thank for taking your time for a couple of minutes. I too wanted to reiterate what she just talked about. You know, you guys, all your hard work, and 2 or 3 times now since I've been around, at least, you guys have been totally ignored after all the work you've done. And I just don't see any reason for that. I think it's wrong. I don't even know what the politics are behind it. But this last thing was really a sad situation. And this facility, I'm certain, is going to be going to a different city now because of that. And so I just want to personally thank each and every one of you guys for all your hard work, and it gets to be a thankless job after a while. And so that's about it. Just keep doing what you're doing and doing the best you can, and I know you will. And I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Oh, by the way, I didn't give my address. I live at 80 Northwest 6th Street, Forest Lake. Thanks.
Hi, Chris Martin, 991 13th Avenue Southeast, Forest Lake. I too want to thank you for your due diligence in all the work that you put into the mental health facility. I really appreciate the time, the thought that was put into it, and I loved that you brought it forward in the way that you did. And I am so sorry that our council, 3 members, threw all of you smart people under the bus. Have a great night.
Anyone else wish to address the open forum? Seeing no one come forward, we'll close the open forum, and we will move to, where are we at here? Number 5, approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes from the March 14th, 2018 meeting.
Before the motion to approve it, on page 2, there's a word that says table, and I think it's meant to be stable. Otherwise, I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
We have a motion to approve. Second?
I'll second.
Motion is second. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Aye. Abstain.
Bailey, you get that? Okay. Next is a site plan amendment for Forest Lake Chevrolet Cadillac at 533 19th Street Southwest. Donovan, I assume you'll be presenting?
Yes, sir. Can I get some video, please? I'd like to present the site plan amendment for the Forest Lake Chevrolet located at 533 19th Street Southwest. The screen will show just the general location of it.
Very good.
Over here, just adjacent to I-35. The site has many non-conforming elements to it, but what the site amendment is for tonight is for an addition of about a 9,000 square foot building area shown in the submitted site plan. It shows the, in gray, it shows the additions of the building, which include a larger, 6 service bays and larger service area, and located here, well, here's the service area and a car wash to serve the facility, but not the general public. This is a permitted use in this highway commercial zoning district. This'll be a single-story structure addition, meets the building setbacks for the zoning district. The submitted elevation drawings show a structure that does meet the design standards. Let's see, I'm sorry. And image there. With acceptable materials and design elements. And it does not significantly impact parking. There's ample parking for the site. There's no additional landscaping proposed. In this case, there are no trees or, surrounding the perimeter of the parking lot. There's no foundation plantings, and at this point, staff does recommend not installing landscaping, as it seems like it'd be not prone to surviving. There's a parkland dedication fee associated with expansion of commercial properties, and that totals a little over $3,000. And the city engineer made a series of comments, a review in his review letter for the site, and we found that it also does not require any watershed district permitting. So at this time, staff recommendation is to approve the site plan with the conditions. And I'm happy to take any questions from the planning commission.
Commission members, any questions for the city?
So what are the exterior building materials?
Shown here, they are, we have concrete masonry block, the,
So is that what the existing building is there? Is it that same kind of concrete block?
yes, and there's kind of a, I'm not sure, the kind of architectural cladding that, Chevy does require. Think,
Yeah, around the top.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
so that's, looking to the southeast, I believe, with the addition being these 3 bays here, one of those being a car wash. And here's the, again, the rear of the site. This would be from the, if you could see it from the freeway.
Other question, is this car wash a new part of the business, or did they have a car wash, they're just building a new one?
I believe it's a new part of the business, and it'll just serve the cars that are there, the new cars and repair vehicles. So it's not, isn't a standalone use, so it's not subject to the general standards for car washes. But of course,
What about, I guess my concern was the use of the water. Is it recycled, is it wasted, do we know how the water's gonna be treated?
I don't know. The architect, Greg Dolling, is here, and perhaps he could answer for you.
Other questions for the city? Give us 1 minute. Whoa. I was hoping someone would be here. Any other questions for the city? Mike?
Donovan, the city engineer brought up an issue about parking on the south end of the site. What is that about?
Yes, what we identified, we learn always something new, is that this parcel right here, so that, give you a little context, this is the rest area here,
Right?
and so this is all, MnDOT-owned property. Well, this little parcel here is city-owned. And as you can see on this aerial, there's some vehicles parked there. It looks like it's an encroachment from the Chevy dealership. And so I put an inquiry into MnDOT as to what's the history of this site, because I don't see any kind of public use for it. So perhaps it's something, there could be a sale to the private property owner and, proper use of that property.
One more question. What is the right-of-way width of 119th Street? Or 19th Street? Do you know what the right-of-way is there? Is it a 60-foot right-of-way it typically is?
Yeah, I believe that's a 60, yeah.
Have you noticed parking of vehicles within the right-of-way? It appears that they're advertising cars, maybe not this site, but the site to the north are advertising cars and parking them within the right-of-way.
I've noticed this.
Maybe something the staff can look into.
Sure, okay.
Any other questions for the staff? Hearing none, the architect's representative, the architect, please come up, introduce yourself, and I think we have a couple questions for you. First, though, if you'd like to make a few comments about the project, feel free.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, my name's Greg Dolling with Finn Daniels Architects, here on behalf of Forest Lake Chevrolet. Thank you for consideration of our project tonight, and thank you to Donovan for helping through the planning submittal process and the assistance. So at this time, I can answer any questions that you might have.
How about the water treatment? Do you want to start with that?
Yes, for the car wash at this time, there are no plans within the project to recycle the water and reuse it. It would be like a typical car wash where it goes into a drain and goes into the normal sewer treatment system.
Other questions for the architect? Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome.
This is not a public hearing. I know there's a lot of excitement out there. I can see it in your guys' faces, so. So, planning commission members, what's your pleasure, as they say?
Mr. Chairman, I guess, and maybe I have a hang-up about the waste of water because of the controversy that we've had in the area and with wells and the use of water and you know, is that something that, and I know that it's obviously not in our zoning that you have to do this or that, but is that something that the city could encourage? People are gonna use a lot of water to figure out a way to recycle it. I know that there's some car washes that do recycle it. Filter it and recycle it, or however they do it. I'm not exactly sure the process, but at least not just wasting it.
We do seek those, so it's water conservation in larger projects. And you're correct that there is no, current zoning code requirement for recycling. For instance, however, with the school district, they've sought grants and are doing some water recycling. The Gateway Greens apartments, which are soon to be break ground in the Gateway Green subdivision, they will have a water conservation element to it. So it's not a common thing, I would say, but we do encourage it, and the city engineer can speak of other instances. But the current concern, if you're talking about the White Bear Lake and everything, and those water conservation, we are actually in a different aquifer, so that's not a direct impact. Though I think in this age, it always is good if cities are aware of this. So I'm not to discount this, the seriousness of it.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I would make a motion that we approve the site plan amendment. Whoop, sorry.
I had one thing too, and that was, I had a bullet point here about the car wash too, with recycling the water. Maybe we're just hitting it twice here, but is there any way that we can have them check into recycling the water? Like, I think the car wash over here on Broadway, they recycle their water. Just, if we can't make them do it, maybe something to look at in the future as any car wash, things that come in that try to be environmentally safe and recycle our water and that kind of thing.
Certainly, I mean, there is something, economic incentive, I believe, since the actual development fees are related to, sewer charges, the Met Council, SAC charges, and that, it would probably be advantage if to minimize that expense as a business. But certain, I can have some further conversations with the applicant, and we can look at that with our, for the next
Well,
comprehensive
what's the
rezoning.
savings and then over a 10-year period or 15-year period, because they're gonna put a car wash in there and they're gonna be using it for a long time. And it's real close to all the, well, it has no difference or no peak as to, where the location is, but is there a cost savings for them in the long run? So, that's all.
Donovan, is there anything that would prohibit them from adding a recycling component if we were to pass this as staff recommended?
I don't know physically what, if that would produce some sort of site, amendment, or maybe if, it could be a condition if there was some sort of, significant site, change with, if they did install some sort of water conservation, component, they wouldn't have to come back to the, plan commission for a site plan amendment again. So I'm saying that, you could pass, you could, make a recommendation, they investigate that, and then also that you provide it's, that staff work with the applicant, and if there's any, site plan change due to that extra component, that it not require a site plan amendment. Through the plan commission.
So Donovan, you're saying that you could work with them and just see if there is something that they could do that would make sense economically and business-like, but it wouldn't have to necessarily modify the amendment that's being processed now?
Right. I mean, not as a requirement, but as a way to encourage it, and also explore, if it economically makes sense, I think that, it's something that the business owner would seriously consider.
You start. Mike? Go ahead.
Donovan, I assume that the water use is metered and they're charged appropriately according to their use of the water.
Certainly.
Well, at some point, I think the business will decide if they, they're spending too much money on water, if they should recycle. And perhaps, if it does become an issue, maybe we need to look at our utility billing for commercial use or for car washes. There's certainly a way to encourage them to recycle if we had to. So I think it's an issue that probably the businessmen will probably look at themselves and decide whether or not they want to keep paying the high water bills or if they want to recycle.
Kevin, did you have something?
Yeah, Donovan, my question is not related to the water, however, that is a concern. It's more related to the cars and the parking stalls. Can you confirm that, what it says here, that they need to have 91 spaces for which are accessible? Have we been out there to look and count? Because I've been in that parking lot and you can't maneuver around in there. So I'm concerned that they have more vehicles in there than they're allowed to have currently. Is there a requirement? And I noticed, like you saw in the overhead, that's why they're not parking in their lot and they're parking off on city property. And now if you're gonna take up another, what'd you say here? Sorry, refer back to my notes.
About, you mean the building addition square footage?
Another 9,000 square feet of building space, you're gonna eliminate more space.
I have not counted the spaces. You're right, that does equate to, 36.
300 square feet of stall, that's 30 stalls.
Says it equates 91 spaces are required, including, or 4 of which are accessible with the required room for maneuvering and stacking. I guess I'm a little hesitant only because I don't think they have adequate spaces.
If I could?
Yes, please.
The site plan that Donovan has up there, site plan that Donovan has up there. So as part of this project, we'll be restriping the lot and striping those 91 stalls in to account for the ones that are being taken over by the building additions that are put on. So there will be 91 stalls striped on the lot for customers and service overflow as per the city code.
Do you have an overlay of that? We see something?
It-
I mean, can you show me the 91 spots?
This particular site plan does not, but Donovan, if you could page to A100, that one. Those have the 91 parking stalls striped on it. So
And
there's,
currently, how many do you have?
I don't know that number off the top of my head, what they have. All I did was calculate what would be necessary for the existing building and the new additions per the city code. So I don't know what they have currently. The shaded parking areas off to on the outer perimeters there, those are the new vehicle display and used car displays around the lot. So those are not, as you know, going through there parked in a specific stall. It's just pavement area that they lay out the vehicles in. But the required stalls will be striped.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess number one is that we're happy to see people expand in Forest Lake and the business is going good, and that's a good sign. So with that, I would make a motion that we would approve the site plan amendment as presented.
I'll second. Any discussion on the motion? Eric?
I'll have one point of discussion here, and for full transparency, I'm a Ford guy, but I'm not gonna hold that against you. But with regard to the water treatment, I think that's probably a good idea, and maybe it's something you haven't even considered. And I wonder if we could add a condition in here, something along the lines of water treatment on site for car wash may be added with staff and engineering approval, so that they could do that without coming back to us in this process.
Are you okay with it?
I'm okay with that.
Yep. So am I. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Good luck. Next is a comprehensive plan amendment, a zoning map amendment, a preliminary plan unit development amendment, preliminary plat applications for the Headwaters Place. The way this will work this evening is the city will present the information as they know it. The planning commission members will then ask any questions similar to what we did before. We will then ask the applicant if they would like to speak. Following that, we will have the public hearing, and anyone who wishes to speak to this issue will be invited to. I'll give a little more direction at that time. And then we'll close the public hearing, and it'll come back for a recommendation by the planning commission. So with that, I believe Donovan, you're presenting?
Certainly. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, I'd like to present the comprehensive plan amendment, the preliminary plat amendment, the zoning map amendment, the preliminary PUD amendment, lot line adjustment amendment for the Headwaters Place project. The location is here, generally on Forest Road across from the Harwood Creek Transit Center and the YMCA and the Service Center. Just to review, basically it's what the applicant seeks to do is subdivide the property for 30 twin home lots, an outlot for an apartment building, 2 outlots for the stormwater management facilities, and 1 public road. And showing these 5 applications with the lot line adjustment having administrative review, but will not be approved until the other pieces are approved. And of course, one piece here is that these are all recommendations to the city council, and the comprehensive plan amendment actually has final decision at the Metropolitan Council. The full site area is 49.5 acres, and that's because with the collection of parcels, only about 11.8 acres are actually part of this preliminary plat that we'll be reviewing, and the other pieces, it's kind of an overlay so that the full city, wooded acres get replatted with this action. The zoning districts are industrial, multiple family, headwaters, PUD, and airport overlay. And then the comprehensive land use plan categories are high-density residential, parking and recreation. And then, because it's not complex enough, we have a land exchange and vacation of drainage utility easements that go straight to council. Now, see, aren't you glad you came back, Commissioners Lee and Black? Thank you. What we have here simply is the green parcel is the multiple family zoned parcel currently. Yellow is city-owned land, zone industrial, and the brown circumscribed land is industrial zoned, and the land swap involves the brown and yellow pieces. And so, as part of this, the developer would like to change this parcel to meet the zoning district and comprehensive plan requirements for residential. In exchange, we'll give the city, this is about 10-acre parcel here, it's about 4.2 acres here. And so that's kind of the context for it. And the comprehensive plan amendment then would make the lands suitable for residential, as well as taking a parcel at multiple family and basically downzoning it for the twin homes. And similarly for the zoning map amendment, shifting it from that 4.2 acres from industrial to the residential zoning of MXR1, and then also the multiple family on the rear part of the multiple family zone lot to the also that single, the MXR1 zoning. And that is shown graphically on the applicant's submittal here. You can see the multiple family zoned lot here, and then the shift to one part remaining multiple family. More about that one later. And the MXR1 in this darker shaded area, and the remaining still industrial and park and recreation future land use there. And also I'd like to mention that these do require separate motions if we get to that point. I'd like to then dig into the actual specifics of the plan use development or PUD amendment. This whole area was part of the Headwaters PUD that was adopted in 2006. And though there were many different housing types, the twin homes with a front-loaded garage were not one of the building types. So we'll get into the preliminary plat in a minute, but this is just an overview of what's existing for the building setbacks and what's proposed, which, with its, a larger front setback, smaller side, larger corner, which you could also call it a side street setback on corner lots. And then there was no rear setback for the PUD townhouse, so they're proposing a 25-foot setback for the building. And proposing this front-loaded townhome building type, and then also a change with the minimum lot size to be a minimum of 5,000 square feet, where in the PUD booklet it's a range from 5 to 7 for the single-family homes, and then a reduction in minimum lot width to 32 from 40. Also with this building type, they're proposing a parking standard of 2 enclosed and 2 off-street parking spaces, which is basically common throughout our residential single-family districts. And at this point, I'd like to pause for any quick questions. And if I don't want you to sit there and have a question in your mind.
Let's start on the left. Mike, work our way down.
Can you go back one, when you showed the map showing the existing, or the proposed land use? Yes, that one. Outlot B, who owns Outlot B?
That's Lot E.
Oh, is it Lot E? I'm-
That's the city-owned
Oh, Lot
lot.
E. Oh, that is city-owned.
Yes, and it's currently mostly forested with some wetlands. And this is currently owned by Pratt Homes, by the applicant here.
Right,
And the
right. No,
Fenway
I was just
Fields
wondering
are
about
for-
Outlot E.
Okay.
And Outlot E on the zoning is industrial, but the future land use map calls for.
Park and
park.
recreation.
So the two maps conflict.
Yes.
Well, that's not a very good practice. What's going on there? I mean,
Dan, you actually had a clue on that one.
On which one?
On the intention, Outlot E in the original PUD states that it's called preserved woods. But there was no, legal preservation recorded on that lot. And so it's always been out there as a potential development area in the future. But, thus there's the idea that it's zoned industrial, but it's part of the park. I mean, this is something I only recognized, after we got this application, and I agree with you.
okay,
There's a mismatch.
that's my question.
My question was, Mr. Chairman, it's clarifying the land swap. Now, has that been approved by any city fathers yet?
Not formally. A concept subdivision, after it went to Plan Commission, I believe in December, went to City Council, and it received a basic blessing. And it's really dependent, the Twin Home project is dependent on that, that land swap. There's currently a draft sales contract with no money exchange, just simply land exchange, that the city's reviewing, and it's basically just a straight swap where the city gets an addition to the park area on a parcel that is really impacted by wetlands. I imagine you're aware of how basically wetlands, bisect that lot. And also there's been a series of development proposals on there. Nothing's seemed to have worked, from, a church to solar mounted, array to, charter school. And so it's definitely a challenging lot, but meanwhile, it could provide extra playing fields and parking area for the park area.
Currently, that land is owned by Pratt.
Correct.
So there's 10 acres there, and the 4 acres then is what he's swapping. He's giving the city 10 and getting 4.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
We drove a hard bargain there.
Nice, I can tell.
Dennis?
I just wanted, you said there were gonna be 2 separate motions, and
It's actually, we probably have 5.
There's going to
Sorry.
be a resolution for the comprehensive plan change, and then a motion, 3 motions will be made. One will be for the zoning map amendment, one for the PUD, and one for the plat
yeah, I
application.
understood that. I thought that you were talking about something else, that some other aspect of this, land swap deal was required a couple motions, but no.
There is, actually, we'll get to that, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, and as long as we're talking about the land swap type deal now, there's also in the proposal, removal of trees in order to open that land for the twin homes. Is that correct? In order to
Yes.
use a certain number of trees that would be taken
Correct.
to make that usable. Okay.
Yeah, we just saw that tree program going on out there by Menards. They were gonna save some of the trees. Has anybody driven by there? Every tree is gone. So much for the tree preservation group. My question is about the setback. The side setback is 10 feet. They're requesting 7.5 feet. Now, just a few years back, I thought it was 15 feet, and we changed it to 10 feet. Am I correct?
This is for the PUD, and
Yes.
the existing Headwaters PUD, that's the latest additions that, 9th, 10th, 11th, have had that 7.5, and also Chestnut Creek have also had 7.5, for a
At
total
10
of
feet?
15 feet between structures.
It is for this PUD.
Okay, what was that, Donovan? I didn't,
It's a total of 15 feet between the structures, and that's,
only 15 feet.
This is what it would turn
Yes.
out,
No, no,
7.5 for each.
7.5 for each lot, so it'll get 15 between each.
Oh, okay, 7.5 each lot. I was thinking 7.5. I'm like, every year it keeps getting smaller and smaller. Next thing you know, we're gonna be down to 3 feet. So,
And then you'd be in the city.
no, that's fine. We're still at 15 feet then.
correct.
Total between the buildings.
Mike?
I have one more.
That was my,
Donovan, on one of the first overheads you did, you talked about 11 point something acres, 11, that the application involved 11.8 acres.
Yes.
When you look at what the existing parcel they own is 3.6, the proposed swamp that the city's gonna give them is 4.2, totaling 7.8. Where's the 11.8?
Okay, yeah, there's, some of the submittals are actually, are net acreages, and so some of the numbers will look different, but basically, the multiple family zone parcel is 7.6, I think that is, and the, and the additional, the land swap area is 4.2,
Well, your,
so that adds up to 11.8.
your staff report says
That's-
outlot outlot H, the green
Is-
parcel is 3.6.
I know, that's a typo, I'm sorry.
Oh, that was a typo?
Yes, I
Okay.
just caught that this evening, I was just
Oh,
preparing
all
this.
right. Okay, so that is, how big?
So it's 7.6.
7.6, okay, all right. Numbers
Apologize
didn't
for
add up,
that.
I was just wondering where we're at. Okay.
Any other questions for Donovan moves on? All right, let's try the next
See if you're
round,
ready.
Donovan.
The staff report. Okay, moving into the preliminary plat. We have what's here, and this is basically north is kind of off to your upper left. Here's Forest Road. The plat consists of one public street coming in with a cul-de-sac to serve the townhouses there. The multiple family site, which will be next on the agenda, is right here. There's two outlots for stormwater management facilities here, ponds, and then also a pond here will feed right into an existing, low area. And also part of this is the fulfillment of another plan, Headwaters PUD. Back in 2006, they thought, what if you had a pedestrian connection from Forest Road out to the playing fields? And so they just drew a dotted line through here that goes by, these multiple family zoned, multiple family apartments. And now with the construction of the road, we have a proposed trail coming through here, and the city actually still holds money in escrow for the construction of this. So this isn't part of like any kind of park dedication or anything. It's already was approved. This will be part of this, and the city's also requiring that some of this sidewalk down here be replaced with a wider trail, so that there is a continuous connection from the playing fields all the way down to the Harwood Creek Trail with the construction of this. Also you'll see here a sidewalk on one side, which the engineer doesn't believe is necessary. He's recommending that it not be constructed. Instead having, on this side, instead having a trail on this east side as that continued trail. And then also what I'd like to direct your attention to is something that wasn't part of the conceptual site plan that Planning Commission reviewed previously, but what's been proposed is a gravel turnaround area here. And this would be, basically a dead-end road with this general parking area that could serve as parking for Trailhead. Or just a simple turnaround area if people, came all the way to the end of the street here. This point, the gravel is not a permitted road material for these type of residential subdivisions. And a cul-de-sac would be in the size of this, 100-foot radius. And at this point, Public Works has commented that they don't want another, cul-de-sac to plow, and there's a large maintenance, and they cost something around $40,000, $50,000. So we're not seeing it's necessary. And at this, my conversations with the site engineer, Dave Hempel, who's also here. Sorry about my introductions, and Tom Backergis, also representing the builders here as well. I'd like to get some feedback from the Planning Commission on what you'd like to see here, also recognizing that during your concept plan review that you suggested parking could be at the transit center if needed, if people did want to park. And what I see going there is simply a dead-end road that people would not, by the time they got to here, they would turn around in the cul-de-sac. And it'd be a low-volume street. It wouldn't be, it wouldn't be any sort of, obstacle or a detriment as far as it just being a dead end at this point. But I'd like to hear from Planning Commission what you recommend.
Is it possible to put trees at the end of that? I mean, you're just talking about the paved road just stopping right there.
Correct.
So there needs to be some kind of a barrier, otherwise somebody will probably drive straight
Well, certainly,
through.
yeah. I mean, there's stub roads throughout the city, and there's a common way of, reflectors on barricades and.
But what about, but that becomes kind of probably objectionable to the residents, but what about trees, the barricade?
Certainly, I mean, it is a wooded area, so, I mean, if we, following construction, we do nothing, the trees will grow there. If, any that are taken out during, construction activity.
Kevin? Or Mike, I'm sorry.
Yep. Well, I'm 100% against a gravel turnaround, parking lot, whatever. Everything's blacktop. These guys are plowing snow. They come up to the end, and now you've got gravel. This time of year, early fall, whenever you get snow, and that ground is soft, you're just peeling up class 5 or gravel or whatever and putting it into the curb lines. It's either gonna be blacktop or nothing at all. Another thing is that if they just have a parking lot down there, is that gonna be a storage facility for people with boats and trailers and things like that live in that area? It's just a dead end. So it's either gonna be designated for something, or it's gonna be designated for nothing, But no gravel at all. I'm against that 100%. I mean, these guys are plowing snow, they got those heavy equipment, they're coming down there, it's gonna be blacktop, they can clear it out and turn around and come back out and have a good day. So, that's my opinion.
Donovan, on the parking lot, I just assume just have a dead-end street there. But my question actually is, has Parks seen where this trail comes out? Are they happy how this sort of lines up, or have they not met on it yet?
They've discussed it. It's been really general, and even here you can see, because, and I've actually, talked to Jamie, the Parks and Rec Coordinator, on that would be a great opportunity for, the Parks, Lakes and Trails Commission to actually do a site visit with the project team to actually, identify, a way that they like the trail to go. But that has not been determined, but what I do believe it would go, to the left of this wetland area and cross, somewhere here and into the, if this would be the park area, enter the park area around here, on the land swap parcel.
So there's high ground there that it could go across?
Correct, yeah, and this was, actually, it used to be a road, so and there's actually city sewer and water that run through there. So there is, but I don't know exactly where all the high ground is throughout this, but, I believe there is. I mean, I'm told there are a number of trails that go through there currently.
Thank you. Other question, Mike?
Donovan, is there any, what's planned for this street? This lines up with Fitzgerald. on the other, at the intersection, right?
Correct.
Is there plans for continuing the street to the direction northwest?
Currently, no. The city owns all that. At some point, a lift station for sanitary sewer would be required because it will run out of elevation. The applicant put this sort of stub road in at the request of council. This concept went through different iterations, through last summer and fall, with the idea that the city didn't want to prevent any future development if in the future that, policy change and there was a desire to extend the road. But, it's my understanding that any sort of extension would require that lift station, and then thus, it'd be, I'd say for quite a few homes to justify that economic expense to make it, worthwhile for development.
So they run out of gravity flow and it's going to require a lift station to go further?
Somewhere beyond this, and, so I can't, never say never on this, but,
We're kind of back to the first question, what's the land use? Is it park or is it industrial? And industrial would kind of be conflict with the residential use that we're considering. But the road, it seems to me that either the road's gonna go through or it isn't gonna go through. And if it isn't gonna go through, why don't we have a cul-de-sac there? Or why isn't that a full turnaround there? The applicant's getting the benefit of not only the benefit of not putting in a cul-de-sac and getting extra lots without putting a cul-de-sac in, which I'm all for getting as many lots as you can, but if the road isn't gonna go through, there should be a cul-de-sac. If the road's gonna go through, the turnaround's being built on the city property, not on the applicant's property. And I guess if the council's already made that deal and has said, okay, well, let's do that, I guess that's the way it's gonna be. But I would think that it's the applicant's responsibility to provide a turnaround, not the city. And if it is gonna be a turnaround there, I think, I agree with Mike, it should absolutely be blacktop. That shouldn't be gravel. That needs to be blacktopped. And it needs to be designed in such a way that emergency vehicles can make a turnaround there, back around and turn around there. Now, I know you have the cul-de-sac and they can turn around in the cul-de-sac, but it raises the issue of turnaround for emergency vehicles. It also should be considered, I don't think we should encourage parking there for trailhead. Now, all of a sudden, you're gonna have recreational use, recreational parking in conflict with that neighborhood. That neighborhood is gonna wanna be its own neighborhood, and they're not gonna really appreciate cars coming up and down in through their neighborhood to park to get onto the trail. I would think we would wanna discourage that, not encourage that. But if that road's gonna go through, I think it should be blacktop, there should be a turnaround there, certainly. But if the road's not gonna go through, I don't know why we're accepting this design. I think the design ought to show another cul-de-sac there, or that the site plan ought to be modified to not show that dead-end road. Either it is or it isn't gonna go through. If we don't think it's gonna go through, I don't think that we ought to accept the plan the way it is.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Dennis?
I am not in favor of putting a cul-de-sac there. There's land out there. There is the potential of the street going through there, even if there's trees there. And I personally don't have any problem with the street just ending there. I'm in agreement that we shouldn't encourage parking back there unless we're gonna put some kind of a parking lot in there. If we're gonna encourage parking, then have the city build a parking lot on their land and, make it into a park. But I don't, that's not, in my mind, that's not part of this application here. And I don't see parking for a trailhead being a big issue. I'm just wondering why it's even come up. If people are gonna use this trail, I don't see them driving into the center of this community or this neighborhood to try to find a place to park. Most people, they're gonna park in a place where it's easy to get in and get out, and they'll go through they'll walk or ride or whatever they're gonna do through the neighborhood. But I don't, I'm also not in favor of gravel. I would be in favor of just ending the street right at the property line and just be done with it for now. With the idea in mind that in the future, that if some development comes along, I don't think that the lift station, the lift station is, again, not part of this application, but it is part of the economics of developing this. And if the economics of this development, of developing this land become feasible to somebody, then they'll do that. I don't see that it makes any difference in what we're deciding on with this particular application.
Mike? Donovan, do you know what the future of this land at the end of the street's gonna be in the next couple of years? You know what that is? It's city-owned land, so.
Well, it's the Park and Lakes and Trails Commission's desire that it remain undeveloped. I mean, they didn't like any sort of development.
So it's not gonna be housing or anything like that? It's parks
Not-
and,
Well, I mean, I think it's always, it's, city policy can change, and I'm just one
Okay.
staff person,
Anything
not,
can change.
But,
So-
I think that's, I mean, with conversation with the Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission, they, we perhaps suggested maybe, sanitary sewer and water could be extended a little bit for potentially a future restroom or something like that, and they didn't like that idea at all, like, city built. They really just wanted the road to end and not have no further encroachments within the forest.
okay.
At this point.
Because I had some questions here as far as if it's gonna stay parks and trails. You go down there, put a parking lot in, put some sort of a gazebo in there with a bike tire changing machine thing there and some trails and picnic tables and stuff. But if that's not gonna happen, then just dead end, just make it a dead end. Make it simple.
One other question. How much, you said everything beyond the lines that we see there that shows the twin homes. How many acres are there that are open land that won't be used by? I thought that they were gonna expand some playing fields and stuff like that and use up most of that land. Wasn't that their intention?
Well,
Or is it open land that's gonna stay open?
Well, you mean like in the land swap lot?
Yeah.
I don't know, we haven't officially, exchanged the property, and I don't know what the current, Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission thinking is on that, other than what my understanding that there's a greater need for parking, there's a greater need for soccer fields. But, we even had someone thought a dog park might be good there, but, so I don't know, really.
Other questions for Donovan on this issue? Otherwise, we'll let him move on to his next one. I don't want to cut you guys off, but you'll have questions regardless of what he covers. So, Donovan?
Okay, looking more at the plat, it's, the proposed gross density is 3.6 acres, which meets the comp plan designation for this low, medium density, area, future land use category. I had a note that, there's a current 30-foot wide, driveway, width, which is a city engineering standard, and that the future sites, future garage, driveways not be wider than that, because the garage openings are approximately 44 feet wide. And the outlots A and B will have drainage utility easements over them, but will remain, in the as in ownership of the HOA to be created. There are a series of drainage utility easements that are on the site, as I mentioned, that would have to be vacated or either removed or changed to accommodate this development. The engineer is confident that those can be, and so they're proceeding with all these applications, and then with the final plat submittal that'll come to vacate those easements. And the Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission does recommend that, the fee in lieu, the park dedication fee, be accepted in lieu of parkland for this development. The woodland preservation landscaping regulations wouldn't, at this point, we believe they would not require tree replacement. And there is a landscaping plan that is being proposed. There's also would be something of a PUD booklet amendment, but there is no PUD booklet landscaping plans for this area. And they're proposing a total of 121 deciduous and coniferous trees. And at this point, the fire chief did propose a change in two of the locations of fire hydrants from the western side of the street to the eastern, shown. Oops, I'm sorry. I don't have that right here. I'll show you on the plat where shown. Well, I'll tell you roughly that they're located, currently located on this western side here and here approximately. And Chief Newman requires them to be placed on this side, on the eastern side, approximately on this side of the driveway, and then on this side of the proposed driveway for the apartment building. And that's to allow trucks to come in and not have hose being laid over the street if in the event of a fire at the apartment building. And otherwise, the chief didn't have any concern about this road layout. And at this point, staff recommends the Planning Commission approval for the applications. There are engineers' comments, which are also conditions. As mentioned, there are a number of motions that and requests that the Planning Commission, in their consideration, if they were to make a motion. And one does involve making findings and approving a resolution stating that the land disposed of the 4.2 acres of city-owned property is consistent with the comprehensive plan. And I'm happy to take any more questions from Planning Commission.
Any other questions for Donovan? All right. I believe the applicant's here. Would they like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. My name is David Hempel with Westwood Professional Services, 12701 Whitewater Drive, Suite 300, Minnetonka. We just moved, so I think I got that address right. Thank you very much for hearing our proposal here this evening. It's good to be back before you. It's a little warmer now than it was December, January when we were here. Mr. Pratt apologizes that he's not able to make it here tonight. He had another engagement actually out of the country, so I'll do my best to try and fill his shoes and answer questions and so forth. I also have Tom Bacherjees here with Homestead Properties, who will work with the building side of it. In a nutshell, based on the staff report, I compliment Donovan on a thorough staff report that he's done, and as well as the engineering department on the significant conditions they have listed. Many of them are pretty much boilerplate conditions, and they're all workable. I have no issue with those. Maybe just to touch a little bit on the turnaround and the history of that. I remember discussions at both Planning Commission and City Council what to do with the end of the street. Should there be a trailhead parking? Shouldn't there be? We have the transit center 600-700 feet away on Forest Road there with ample parking, ample trail connection, with the trail proposed with this subdivision would extend it through the woods all the way up to Fenway Athletic Park. So we would complete what was envisioned with the Headwaters PUD. Our first choice would be not to have anything at the end of that road, just to barricade it off or plant some additional trees. The 10-foot wide trail would continue down the slope and meander through the woods, and we'll work with staff and the Park Recreation to discover the appropriate alignment to minimize tree loss and any kind of wetland impact. There is high ground back there. There's 1 or 2 isolated wetlands that was shown on the plans. I feel very confident that we can negotiate through those woods with that trail. It'd be a really nice environment back there for a trail. And feel free to stop me at any time with any questions you may have. I don't have a lot, but I just kind of want to follow up on the trail and on the turnaround there a little bit. Again, all the conditions have been written here are workable, and we can make those work. Fire marshal, no problem switching hydrants over. Landscaping wise, there will be tree loss with this due to the creation of the pads for the twin homes for the extension of the road. There's 8 to 10 feet of fill involved in many of the house pads to elevate the site to get the sewer gravity flow through there. And most of that dirt is coming from the excavation of the ponds. So there's no imported material at this point. The earthwork does balance on the site. Missing something else, Tom? So I'm kind of open for any questions then that you might have at this point.
Any question for the applicant? Mike, we'll start with you at the end.
10-foot trails throughout the whole place.
Correct.
Other than that, I had a good call on the fire chief for the hydrants being moved to that side of the street because of the commercial building there. That's a good call, and that's all I have.
Okay. Gary? Oh, Dennis, you had something?
Oh, go ahead. Airport noise, has that been evaluated? Is there any kind of, I'll say, screening planned, or is that necessary, or what's the thoughts there?
That's a very good question. We tried to intensify the landscape along the buffering of the perimeter of the property, both the airport and the future apartment site to the south. We're trying to give it some buffer. I would envision the building construction of the homes there would also have more soundproofing, if you will, if necessary. I'm not sure of the airport noise. We haven't been out there to check decibel levels or anything like that. But construction-wise, home-wise, they can build in, insulated more windows or those types of things.
Is that the plan to do that? I believe the builder's here. Is that the plan to beef up these homes for sound?
Good evening. My name is Tom Bachvergees with Homestead Partners, land developer. Right now, we are working with Lynn Pratt on really identifying the couple builders that are interested. We do build homes as well. But looking at the report, the concern wasn't so much the noise from the airport, it was the height restriction with the multi-use building. So the way I interpret it, right now, there is no requirements from the airport that affects the homes and so forth. But if it does, we will have to upgrade the windows and so forth. But I don't read that right now in the report. It's the height restriction that was a concern at one point.
Thank you. Dennis?
This, not to beat a dead horse here, but the dead-end street there, I would be in favor of just ending that street there. That the grading that's proposed there, that's so that there would be this turnaround thing on city property? Does the site drop off? The site's gonna drop off there?
That's
Right? Am I reading that
correct.
right? Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, so I don't know why there needs to be anything more than whatever grading would be needed to make the transition for that trail down to the lower level into the wooded area there.
We agree.
I think you should just take that thing off there.
If I could add one thing there, Commissioner Batty. There is city engineer requirement to extend the road a little bit so that if vehicles were backing out of this last driveway, that they would have like a kind of a hammerhead essentially. That's,
Yeah,
so
but
there's a,
just pave it all, just, I mean, you can end it
But
wherever you
no-
want to end it, but,
right.
just,
Yeah, you could end it 2 feet past their driveway, so they have no room to back out.
yeah.
Right.
I would be fully in favor of that.
Sure.
This to my left here, any questions? It's fair.
One other question is probably for, is it Don? In regard to the market, is there any concern about having the housing, well, I'm going to say low-income apartment building, and then the housing, and everybody drive by the low-income housing and all, it's all open parking, it's all, is there a perception there for having, because my understanding is it's under market rate type of apartments that are intended versus market rate twin homes?
Right now, in discussions with Lynn Pratt, there doesn't seem to be a concern at all. Where our price point's anywhere, I think, in the 400 range for the twin homes is what we were striving for. So there isn't anything in the marketplace that we see that's concerning at this stage.
So they're gonna be that high. I thought initially that there was some discussion, the reason they went to twin homes was to make it a little more affordable, not necessarily low income, but affordable, $300,000
Affordable,
range, I
but
heard.
we also have the comp plan to deal with. You couldn't reduce that area down to a low density, a true low density. We had to meet the guidelines. And twin homes is an alternative housing style that there is a certain marketplace that are looking for. So right now, we believe it'll be fine in the market rate between the 3s and 4s. That's what we're striving for.
Mike?
Okay. Decibel levels, you say if necessary. When does necessary come into play?
In the report. Did you want to answer that?
No. Outside my expertise.
No. And in the report, there's called an airport influence zone. So right now, I do not know what all the guidelines are, but I'm looking at the report here, and it doesn't seem that we're affected by that. So I apologize, I don't have all those guidelines.
I don't either, that's why
But
I
if-
asked the question.
If it is required, then we have to do it. Anytime you're next to a railroad or anything like that, you have to do the same thing, or highway.
And when will you find out if it's in there or not?
Well, when Lynn gets back, we're gonna have this discussion.
Okay.
Can you go back to the affordability part of it, of the twin homes now, for a minute, as far as, you're doing literally 2 homes on 1 lot, is that kind of what twin homes amount to?
No,
Is it
there's,
80-foot lot?
yeah, each twin home will have its own lot, it's just the wall is
But-
joined.
But it'll be,
Zero lot.
together they're 80, which, is that a normal residential lot is 80 feet wide? So there's 2 residences on the
That
80
is correct.
feet.
That is correct, sir.
So even by dividing that lot in 2, it still keeps the price at that level. I have a little hang up on affordable,
And
the
again,
need for affordable.
we are in the
corner places.
preliminary stages of the actual costs and design and so forth. But we wanted to show, right now, this is what we believe we can build here.
And maybe both of you or one of you would know, is there also adjacent land anywhere to this development that's available for other kinds of businesses or retail, industrial, that's close to this? The open land that's maybe to the west? No, east, sorry.
Yes, very good question. As a part of the overall master PUD for Headwaters, there was a retail component directly to the south. Donovan, could you pull up the overall map? I don't have a pointer with me, but this area of the bank there, that area there was all zoned and envisioned for a retail component, all in that area. And so with more of these rooftops coming in, I've got to believe that that's going to be a more valued site now that will support retail use with the additional rooftops and residents will have in that area.
Any other questions for the applicant?
If I could just back up, make one point.
Sure.
The original PUD for Headwaters always showed this apartment type use on this outlot. And I'm just wondering if back then, maybe they took into consideration of the airport zone, because the airport's been there for all those years, so. But more to come on that. It's a very good question that we'll look into. So.
Thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing, so the way this will work this evening, we will invite anyone who would like to speak to come up to the lectern, state your name and address for the record, and spend a couple minutes telling us what you think of any one of the four items that we're going to be making either a resolution or a recommendation to the city council on. When you're finished, then we'll just close the public portion of this, and it'll come back for some recommendations by the planning commission. So with that, I'll open a public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak to the issue?
Susan Young, 9950 199th Street North. And I was kind of around during the development of the initial PUD. The original vision for that apartment area was elder housing, and to sort of mimic the two existing that are up farther on the parkway. Pardon me, up farther on the road, past the library. The land swap is going to be, I know the EDA has had a lot of discussions about that and what's going to go in there. And Mr. Al Hoagie is here tonight, who's president of FLA, the Forest Lake Area Athletic Association, who's been more involved in that. But there will be fields. We have a horrible dearth of playing fields, whether it be baseball fields, softball fields. Lacrosse has gotten huge. We have a lack of football fields. So fields will be an important part from FLA's perspective and from discussions that I understand have been ongoing with Mr. Pratt about that land swap area. Unfortunately, in the future, we're still going to be dealing with humans. And those humans that are going to be parents and grandparents going to the ball fields are going to take the shortest point, or the shortest distance between their parking point and the ball field point. And the FLA parking lots are going to be a significant distance away. So it would not be surprising to me if some of those humans were to look at this area and see a fairly direct line to get to where their kids are going to be playing some sport or another. With respect to the commercial question, that commercial area is where the Patriot Bank was and where the veterinary hospital is now. And that was envisioned as a very strong commercial area. It has not been able to be developed for commercial. The market just hasn't been there. It was hoped that another development on 61 would help spur that commercial development and the development on the other side of 61, 61 and 202nd. It's been for sale for a very long time. But if you have questions about the ball fields and the potential impact of parents and parking and traffic through there, I think that Mr. Hoagie would be a much better person to talk to. And I know that the EDA has discussed that, and I guess I'm kind of surprised that cross-fertilization didn't happen. Thank you.
Hey, Susan? Are you talking about the, at the end of that dead-end street there, the parking and stuff to go to straight across?
It would not surprise me if human parents were to do that sort of thing. Just.
Well, that's why I said I thought it would be good if they put in a big parking lot there and then some sort of a gazebo thing and all that to a gateway towards the trails and stuff for that area. But that, it'd be nice to have someone here from Parks and Trails to discuss that with and see like, what are their plans down the road? We don't know.
And
at this time, though.
And it's really, I mean, yes, there is cooperation, but FLA is trying to take care of making sure that kids have a place to play, because that's something that the city has not been able to get the funding to do. I guess one final thing. With respect to the airport overlay, the airport overlay has to do with the uses and the heights. it has nothing to do with whether or not the buildings that are built should have any kind of soundproofing or vibration issues or anything like that. That airport overlay doesn't deal with that. That airport overlay deals with the uses under approaches and to a certain distance on either side of the approach, and with the height of those uses and power lines.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the application? I'll ask one more time. Does anyone else wish to speak to this application? Seeing no one come forward, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commissioners for some recommendations.
Can I ask a couple more questions?
Gary, you were gone for 3 months. You must have 3 months of questions in you.
You been writing them down?
I was. In regard to what Susan brought up about people possibly using that trail, how far is it from that dead end, proposed dead end, to the first fields that would be there? Anybody have Al, do you have a feel for how many feet that is?
Offhand, I do not, Yuri. I don't have a plat here with me of what, was presented to the EDA and presented in part. Even back last August, that was done when Aaron Parrish was still here. He had, if I recall, I was at the meeting and he had developed it. Do you want me to come up there? Not going enough. What I was saying is that.
Excuse me, would you, just for the record, would you state your name and address?
Sure, I can do that. Al Hauge, 21750 Forest Road North, Forest Lake.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is, if anyone's familiar with Fenway and the way it's laid out, the baseball field, field number 5, this would be the land directly to the east of that and then also to the north, which encompasses where we have the ice arena, okay? There is parking on the top end of where the ice arena is that was done by us about 5 years ago through the approval of the city. Currently, it is roped off and not being used at all. I've had talks with the city about turning that into a complete parking lot with paving it. And if future development in this area, as we have discussed along with Len Pratt for a number of years, that's something that could definitely be done. There is a little bit of a challenge with some of the wetland. However, the majority of the land is high ground, but only conducive for green spaces, ball fields, that kind of thing. Nothing as far as, building and having foundations, with the exception of possibly a small concession stand. And with that, we would like to have, and I know the city's desire when we had talked was to have bathrooms in that area also. So when the question came up about the sewer and water, I would hope that the trunk line would stop so it could always be added onto from that point, which would make sense. But I do not know specifically the amount of footage that there is from where the ball fields would be to this particular piece of parcel as designed.
Mr. Architect here figured it'd be about a quarter of a mile.
Quarter of a mile? Is that far?
I was thinking that was very close.
Okay.
It's somewhere around 1,200.
1,200 feet? Okay. Could be. I haven't been out there to measure it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
One more. Is there any, has there been any thought or discussion in regard to making this a 60, originally the apartments were intended for senior housing. Was there any thought or discussion about making the residential area into a 62-plus type of an area? Or 55-plus? And I don't know if there's any benefit of that, tax-wise, finance-wise, otherwise.
That's a good question. I believe there was some discussion early on about that, but to limit it to an age group wouldn't be, I don't think it would be, that's the word I want to use. Not appropriate, but maybe not legal, maybe not all that. To limit that to a certain type of person, age group or whatever, it was just too restrictive. I mean, the whole neighborhood, the whole PUD of Headwaters is kind of from younger family starters, up to the elderly group. So there's a lifestyle of homes available in the project. So
It wouldn't make sense unless there was a financial benefit of doing it tax-wise or otherwise.
I don't have the expertise in that, to be honest. Thank you.
Commissioners? Thoughts, motions, questions?
Hey, Donovan, can you give your opinion? I think there's pretty broad support to not have a gravel piece at the end of that road. Would you give an opinion of how we could modify that and where you think it's most appropriate in one of these motions, or in multiple motions if necessary?
I think the engineer staff report provides direction there. In condition 13, there is a requirement to extend the sewer and water 20 feet and 15 feet beyond the property line in Street 1, which would be this, the area we're talking about. And a simple, add a condition that the street, sorry, that's utilities. The street extension, I'm not sure which condition. I talked about it with Ryan, but it could be a simple condition that that there be a dead end consistent with city engineer's requirements, and keep staff direction that we should know gravel or turnaround area beyond the applicant's property.
And which of the motions, presuming a supportive motion, which motion do you think it's most appropriate in?
I'd say the preliminary plat.
Which is?
Which is, as in, the number of in the recommendations, which, that is the one at the top of page 6.
Yes.
Bottom of page 5. I'm sorry, that's my pages. The last, basically the last, the second to the last recommendation.
We're on page 26 of the PDF.
But staff recommends a planning commission recommendation of city council approval for preliminary plat approval to divide the subject property to create 30 twin home lots, a 3.4 acre lot, and 2 outlots with stormwater management facilities. And with the condition that the street number 1 not be extended beyond the applicant's property.
What page was that?
We're on the bottom of page 25, the top of page 26 of the PDF. All right, while you guys are giving this all profound thought, the staff has nicely laid it out in order of the way we would like these motions and recommendations. Because if we don't think the land swap is a good idea, it kind of negates the next one and the next one and the next one. So maybe the easiest is to take it to from the top, and the first thing we need to decide is which would be a resolution, that the land disposal of the 4.2 acres of Outlot E is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Any discussion on that part of this application.
No, other than, is that where they referred to the Minnesota statute that had to be done just a certain way? There was a reference to
Right, I put a request.
62, 356?
Correct, and I do not have that language from the city attorney, the formal resolution, but it could be a motion that could direct staff to, write the, make the findings and write that, in a resolution to be presented to city council. But this is similar to, if you recall, in Lighthouse Lofts, as part of one of the TIF requirements was that Planning Commission finds consistent with the comprehensive plan. To actually put the multifamily apartment there. No, don't remember that?
Yes, it's, well, back there.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the first.
That would be step
simple
one.
motion.
Yep.
And is that, the other clarification, and maybe to Susan Young's point earlier, is that we're recommending this stuff to the council. Is that correct?
Correct.
Each of the ones that we're doing are not a final decision by the planning commission.
Correct.
So none of them are, not even this first one.
No, you are correct, that none of these are, right. But they're looking for a resolution that we support the land disposal.
Okay, for this first issue here, I'll make a motion that the planning commission recommend to the city council support for the notion that this is consistent, that this use is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion?
And we know in fact that it is consistent with the comp plan?
We have pretty broad
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty,
power on that.
Yeah, so it
It's
should be.
already been established.
Yeah, so we're just re-jostling the areas of the PUD.
Is staff looking for us to give findings? Or is staff prepared to bring those findings to council when the final resolution is passed?
the language I had from the city attorney states that the plan commission will need to review the proposed land exchange and report in writing to the city council its findings as to the compliance of the proposed disposal of the land is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. Council can always, if the plan commission fails to do this, the council on a supermajority vote could adopt that finding that there is the disposal of the property has no relationship to the comprehensive plan.
So we don't need to come up with findings today.
Well, I believe it's recommended you do so that we just keep the process going. But that state statute does allow the other option.
Can the findings be in discussion, or does it need to be in the formal motion?
No, I think it is a formal motion. And it's, in this case, because I don't have the language in front of me, it would also be direction to staff to create the report that could be, the report that would be in writing to be presented at city council.
Okay,
We want that.
all right. So, we don't necessarily, I don't want this thing to come down to a supermajority. I want us to do everything we can here tonight to allow this thing to be approved by the city council in normal fashion. So does that mean then that we have to come up with findings?
No.
Or,
We can have the city, you can direct the city to come up with the findings.
yeah.
Correct. I mean, that's,
Well, okay.
I requested the-
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's include that in the motion, that we're directing this city planning staff to come up with findings. One of the things that I would mention, I should have done more research on the findings end of this, and I didn't. But this is already part of a PUD, this property, right? Are
Correct.
not both pieces of property part of this Headwaters PUD?
Correct.
Okay. In my mind, that is actually findings enough to say that this is consistent, because the nature of a PUD is that it allows us, you know, to establish conditions for what we want to accomplish in this way. That's what I believe anyway, in regard to in this case, in regard to land use, which is what that's what the issue is whether using this land in this way is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Did I say that right?
I think so.
So your motion was to say it was consistent, and am I correct that to recommend the staff come up
Yes.
with the findings?
Yes.
Who is my second? Kurt?
I accept the amendment.
Any discussion on the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think it's important that we're definitely showing our support for the exchange of the land swap. And I think in our request to have the staff prepare the appropriate resolution with the findings of fact supporting the comp plan amendment, we are recognizing, I think, that there is a low change to the comp plan, that the 4.2 acre parcel that the city is giving back to the property owner is now designated industrial, and we're changing that to residential. And I think it just should be noted that we're supporting that and we're okay with that. That's my understanding.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? So the chair is looking for a motion, or no, I'm sorry, for a recommendation to the city council, approval of the comprehensive plan amendment to change the future land use category of this 4.2 acre addition from park and rec to low, medium density residential. Any motion?
I'll make the motion as staff recommended.
I'll second. Any discussion on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Chair is looking for a motion to recommend the city council approval to amend the zoning map district classification of the DePonte Second Edition Outlot E will that we platted as Headwaters Place from industrial to MXR1, single and townhouse residential district, and the portion of DePonte Second Edition Outlet H not platted for outlots B, C, and D from multifamily to MXR1, single and townhouse residential district.
I'll move that using that language that's in the staff report be used to identify the scope of this motion.
I'd second that.
A motion and a second, any discussion?
So now we're taking action on the rezoning.
Yes.
Yep.
So also, could we just be clear, these do include the conditions listed at the end as well?
Yes, we need to do that
Yeah.
as well.
And I would add that to my second. So that means then that this particular section of land, just to make it simpler, which was an industrial piece, there's no longer any industrial zoned property in that vicinity.
Correct, within the subject of our review.
Right.
Correct.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Lastly, the chair is looking for a recommendation to City Council for approval of the preliminary PUD amendment, approval to create building setbacks for twin homes, a lot of twin homes building type, specified parking standards, 5,000 square foot minimum lot size, and a minimum 32-foot lot width in Headwaters PUD. And then there are 11 conditions associated, which really are associated with all three motions.
I'll make that motion, again, using the language and including the conditions that are included in the staff report.
I'll second. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I want to express, I'm still having trouble with this road design. You know, I don't think it's good policy for the city to plat, design dead-end roads. If the road is going to go through, then there should be a turnaround at the end of it, in my opinion. If the road isn't going to go through, then it shouldn't be designed as a dead end. I mean, we shouldn't, as a city, plan and build dead-end roads. I mean, either it's going to go through or if it isn't, and either Park and Rec or the staff, somehow somebody must be talking about putting that road through for some purpose in the future. Otherwise, I would think we're not going to be looking at the design we have. And if the road is going to go through somehow, some way in the future, I think it needs a turnaround at the end, and I think it should be paved. And I think we should build a turnaround.
Thank you. Other comments?
Mike, listening to the comments of the Parks Commission the other night, I don't think that they have any plans of doing any connection to it in their current thinking and planning, and nor do they have the money to do that kind of thing either. So I don't think, the only thing would be to make it a different style of a dead end that was, you know, a house in there and
Right.
the road ended before that, or, you know, but that'd be a whole redesign of that part of the project, so I don't think it would work. I think by ending it as a dead end and having, I would certainly prefer trees at the end of it, so it's an obvious, not a through street, certainly would suffice, that's my opinion.
Mike?
Mike, I disagree with you a little bit about, at that dead end, having a cul-de-sac, a roundabout, any type of turnaround there. Because if they do decide to put in a road later down the road, or down the line, now they have to dig that whole thing up, tear it up. If they just brought the road down to the end and stopped it to the end of the property line and dead-ended it, put a couple of trees on the side, put some posts in there or whatever, if they do decide to extend that road down the road, or down the line, they could just put the road in. So it'd save a lot of money there. You don't have to put in a cul-de-sac, a roundabout, tear it all out, do it again. I hate seeing cities do things 2-3 times. It's just, it's not good policy. But since there's nobody here that can tell us what's gonna happen with that property down the line, I think we just dead end it right there. Whatever they decide, if they put a couple trees, I would plant the trees to the sides so that down, in a few years, if they do decide to put a road in, just extend the road. That's just my comments on that.
Any other discussion? Eric?
I think the motion was to approve as the staff recommended, and I guess I would ask the author of the motion to consider adding in that pavement be required to the distance of the utilities that were presented in the engineering report.
I had no problem with that. I forgot about that. I was gonna do that. I don't want that gravel thing in there. I just want the pavements and the trail to do whatever the trail is gonna do.
Commissioner Langus, if I could clarify, the idea that the utilities would extend beyond the property are that, so that in the future, no pavement would need to be dug up for any kind of extension of the utilities. So,
How about just extending it as far as it needs to be a safe turnaround for that last house on
Okay,
the
certainly.
last unit there?
Would maybe more appropriate language be 20 feet beyond the last driveway on that street?
Just at the end of the property line.
I don't know how far that driveway will go,
20
though.
feet. I think it just needs to be maybe 6, 8 feet beyond the edge of the driveway, and does
Or
that
it
come
could
straight
be-
out there?
The photos show that the garages are actually on the, other side.
We don't know where the driveways are. Perhaps a motion could state that, the pavement be extended per city engineer's requirements.
Yeah.
Not to,
I'm comfortable with that. Based on the city engineer's comment, he was concerned about the last unit being able to back out onto the road.
Right, and have enough room for
Have
snow
access.
storage as well.
I want access, appropriate length of road for that to happen. So I'm comfortable with the city engineer making a call on that.
So Bailey, can you read back the motion, just to make sure we're all clear? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
All of them or just the last one?
Just the fourth one, the last one, yes.
So, motion to recommend to the city council of the preliminary PUD amendment, including the 11 conditions associated with all three motions, and extending the pavement based on the city engineer's comments.
Are we adding in a 12th, or are the engineer's comments adequate?
I mean, is it appropriate to make that a 12th condition, or how do you want to handle that?
I believe so. At this point, I've had a conversation with,
That we'll add condition number 12, that the length of the pavement extending beyond the last drive will be per the city engineer's recommendation.
okay.
And who's my seconder on this?
Eric,
That's good.
Eric was?
Who's the seconder, Bailey?
Paul?
I was afraid it was me. Trying to keep law and order in here, and I get very confused on what I'm doing. Yes, I'll accept that change. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Me, aye.
One abstention. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Good luck with your project.
Commissioner Gerard,
Yes, sir.
we're not done. I'm sorry.
Wait a
The
minute,
final,
you gave me 4 to do, I did 4.
there were 5 total.
Oh, no. Where's the
The
fifth one?
plat, I'm sorry. The preliminary plat,
Where did I miss that one?
it extends between 2 pages.
Oh, my bad.
So a total of
All
5.
right, it's on the bottom of page, it starts on the bottom of page 25 and ends on the very first line of page 26. Yeah, we're looking for a motion for a preliminary plat approval to divide the subject property to create 30 twin home lots, a 3.4 acre lot and 2 outlots with stormwater management facilities. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, the outlots are going to remain as part of the development?
Correct. As far as C and D, I'm sorry, B and D. C is being sold to the nonprofit developer.
All right. Other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye, and again, my opposition is the design of the dead-end road.
Abstentions? Motion carries. Donovan, do you need to correct me again, or am I good? We're done with this application?
For the moment. It'll be back before
I'm
you for
sure it
final,
will.
review.
All right. Number 9 on the agenda is a site plan review for Headwaters Landing on Forest Road. Donovan, I assume you're presenting?
Yes, sir. So in tandem with the previous agenda item, I'd like to present the site plan review for Headwaters Landing. The former was Headwaters Place, this is Headwaters Landing. It's located in basically the same location here, also adjacent to these community amenities of the Transit Center and YMCA and the Service Center. And shown on the submitted site plan, where north is to your left here. So again, this is Forest Road. It's a little bit different orientation. What we have is a 4-story, 45-unit building. Is designated as affordable housing. The developer is Common Bond Communities, represented here by Kayla Scheckman, who's and her project architect. For this, the access is 2 driveways off Forest Road, and with some adjoining walkways. Stormwater pond facility is to the south of the structure. This also is within the Headwaters PUD, and as mentioned earlier, it is part of the original PUD and was designated as senior housing and special needs housing, similar. So this was this was adopted in 2006, so this is something of a 12-year-old vision now coming to fruition with this application. And let's get back to the site plan. The parking is in the rear, as you see. There is minimum design standards for the structure, and there's a series of submitted elevations that do meet that actually for multiple family lot properties. There isn't the required amount of masonry material for the developers requesting flexibility with design standards as part of the affordable housing package. On that note, the developers also asking for flexibility with parking standards and not providing underground parking, enclosed parking, and also flexibility requested on building permit fees and park dedication fees and other things that are allowed within the zoning code under the inclusionary housing provisions. Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission did review this staff recommendation to provide a 20% rebate on the park and dedication fee, and the Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission did not make a recommendation at their April meeting. They didn't think they had enough information about how often was this sort of discount offered, and so we'll attend the May Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission and address them and see if we can get a recommendation from them regarding this. In this case, because their schedule, it's a fee situation, the council makes a final decision on fees. And so I will present May 9th the Park, Lakes, and Trails Commission recommendation, staff recommendation regarding these different fee discounts that the zoning code does provide for in the zoning code. And since I've been here, we did offer this similar discounts to Forest Oak apartments, the second phase. So it's not something that is completely unknown to this planning commission. And also, part of this, as I'm sure you're aware, is that the airport zoning does apply to this as far as height restrictions. And what you see before you is a location compliant with the airport zoning. And these lines, if you look closely, do represent kind of different, kind of almost contours. And this is the transitional plane, the 1 to 7 plane that comes off of, I'm sorry, 7 to 1 transitional surface that comes off this airport property boundary. And they actually had to move the building about 10 feet to the southwest, which is shown here. And the actual site plan that I've been showing you does not represent this, but this is a CAD file location. And then, upon, if this project's approved, staff's requiring that the project team move it to this location. And at this point, there's no concern as far as utility hookups or building encroachments in the setbacks with that change. And the main thing, if you look in the center, there's a kind of a black square, and that's the elevator mechanical room, which is the issue here. Otherwise, the 43.6 foot tall building would have much more flexibility, a little more flexibility with its location, but it does meet the airport zoning in the figure shown here. The applicant did have the Airport Commission review this, and the Airport Commission had some comments on noise, perhaps some noise mitigation and some concern about fencing. And but in this case, the zoning code doesn't require that sort of review. It's more of a courtesy to inform the Airport Commission that this development was occurring, adjacent to that the airport landing area. And the floor areas, the units meet the zoning code requirements, as well as the unit type, where there is adequate, it's a mixture of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And the parking is there's 79 parking spaces proposed with additional 17 additional stalls if needed. And Common Bond Communities has vast experience with this and with these sort of buildings, and I believe they would not underpark it. So there's some flexibility that staff recommends for this, but I have confidence that that the building will have enough parking. And Chief Newman also with this property did review, and he had a recommendation that there be an additional fire hydrant located right at the southeast corner of the property, approximately right in this area, and able to enable, in case of emergency response. And finally, there is there's a landscaping plan which is which doesn't provide perimeter trees on this side of the parking lot, which is of course important, just in consideration of any kind of height restrictions, and provide both trees and foundation plantings. And no signage is considered this time, perhaps in the future, but that would be subject to a sign permit application process. And at this point, staff recommends Planning Commission approval. This is a final approval that the Planning Commission has the authority to have for site plans, with the following 8 conditions and the additional 9th, which relates to that the project comply with all FAA requirements, which my understanding is submittal of a Form 7460 prior to construction, just to ensure that there's it meets the height restrictions imposed by FAA. At this point, I'm ready to take any questions from the Planning Commission.
Any questions for the city? Mike?
Donovan, you said Chief Newman wants a fire hydrant up in that right-hand corner. Where's the other fire hydrant in that area?
The other ones are the ones that I mentioned earlier.
Oh, the two that were gonna
will be
get
here
moved?
and here. I'm
Okay.
sorry, over here.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a third one installed, they're gonna be, that's good, okay, I'm good.
Any other questions for the city?
So there's a tree line that shields or screens it from the main road then that goes in there. On what would be the southwest side of the building?
Correct. Yeah,
So
this,
that's all tree.
yeah.
And
those
there's
will-
no parking on the front side, it's all around the back.
No off-street parking. Correct.
And did I also see that the trash container is within the building, not outside?
That is, I believe, yes, it will be located within the structure, yes.
Any other questions for the city? Hearing none, I believe the applicant's here. Would you like to say a few words?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is Kayla Shuckman. I'm with Common Bond Communities, and here also with our architect, Petro Megitz, with Cost Wilson. Just want to thank Donovan and staff for the thorough job and partnership in getting this application together. Common Bond develops housing. We own and manage over 6,500 units throughout the state, as well as Wisconsin and Iowa. We have communities all over the suburbs. We've got a new development in Ramsey, some properties in Minnetonka and Excelsior. And we're really excited about the location here in Forest Lake. We're excited to meet the need and really excited about the location near the services and the library and the Y. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the applicant?
Is the typical location of your other locations right next to residential, right within residential housing and that, as well as this?
Yeah, we have properties really in a variety of community types, but I was just at a property, our Excelsior property recently, so that's fresh in my mind, and that's right adjacent to some high-end condos, and we really have success in doing that, I think, because we own and manage the properties long-term.
Mike?
You know, when you pick like brick veneer and this and that, and then it says later at the bottom, it says materials to be determined. What exactly are you determining?
I'm gonna look to our architect to fill in the details a little bit there.
Because there was a lot of that to be determined.
Petro Megitz, Cost Wilson Architects, 1301 American Boulevard East, Bloomington, Minnesota. So when you're referring to be determined, it's mostly manufacturers. It's just, is it a Sioux City brick? Is it a Minnesota brick? We're just trying to figure that out. And a lot of that is being driven by price. Thank you.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, since
Mike?
we have the architect, could we have a general description of the exterior materials on the building?
Yes, of course. So you're looking basically at about 25 to 27% masonry. So thank you, Don. So you're looking at about 25 to 27% masonry on the exterior, being brick. We're looking at concrete fiberboard, so a hardy material, or we have a wood look hardy material, also a panel and a lap. And really, we're looking for high durable quality materials that will pretty much, once you put them on, they stay consistent throughout about 25 to 30 years is what you're looking at lifespan.
What's the color key on your elevation here?
I'm sorry, say that one.
What's the color key on your elevation here? What's what?
Oh, so if you're looking at the wood look, you're basically the kind of orangish brown material. And then the darker gray material, I wish I could point.
Darker gray.
Yep, right there, that's masonry.
Okay.
And then the remainder is CFD.
So what is you got at about the third points on the elevation there, you've got,
Third.
it looks like windows and then you've got some green in there. Is that just some contrasting?
That's a different color. Yep, it's a contrasting color.
Okay.
Exactly, yep.
Other questions?
Mechanical equipment, can you talk about that? Where are you gonna have your mechanical equipment?
So it's in-unit HVAC, so Magic Packs. You'll see some grills on the exterior. And then for the common area, so corridors and some of the commons, we'll have a rooftop unit on the top. So each unit is, independent. Basically, a Magic Pack is both heating and cooling.
Irrigation system, I assume there's areas that would be irrigated?
Oh, yes.
I'll go back to my use of water.
Yep. So one of the programs that we have to, we're working with is MHFA, and they have a Green Communities. One of their standards is actually drip irrigation for plantings. So it's as efficient as you can get.
Mike?
Did you say window units? Or individual units outside of their,
Magic Pack. So yeah, so you'll have individual grills for each HVAC unit.
and it'll be on the outside of the building?
Yes, and we color match them.
Okay, because I don't see any of that on these pictures.
And that's our intent, is we try to color match it, so
Oh,
it
okay.
goes, yep,
So it'll blend in.
exactly.
Other questions for the applicant or the architect? Thank you.
Thank you.
It's not typically a public hearing, but if there's anyone who would like to speak, feel free. Typically, the public hearing is held earlier in the process. We have an 11 o'clock deadline.
Your time's up.
Thanks, Paul. I'm Sam Husnick. I live at 80 Northwest 6th Street, City of Forest Lake. I've also served on the Airport Commission for the past 11 years or so. And one of the things that never gets talked about, we always talk about the overlay, and it meets all that criteria. The one thing that we don't talk about is lighting. One of the issues there at the airport is we have a rotating beacon there that runs from sunset to sunrise. And believe me, it's going to shine in those windows. No getting around it. Also, there's, besides the runway lights, which are they're steady lights, they can be turned up and down to some degree, but they're also runway reel lights, they're called reels, runway end identification lights, and they're very powerful strobes that are controlled by the pilots. If you're coming in from 5 miles out, you click the mic, turn these lights on, try to find the threshold of the airport, but they're very bright strobe lights. And I simply want the developers of this property just to acknowledge that that lighting system is out there. And it's a public airport, and it's mandatory that we run that stuff. So just so we know, okay? Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to make a comment? All righty, we'll bring it back to the commission for a motion.
I would make a motion that we approve. Let's see, are we sending a recommendation to the council on this also?
This is the motion to
Okay.
approve.
So I would make a motion that we approve as recommended by the staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I believe your motion includes the 9th recommendation that Donovan talked about, not just the 8 on our form, which is the project complies with FAA Form 7460.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Good luck with your project. Next we come, because I know everyone's still waiting here for the most exciting part of the meeting, the other section. And the other is just an open discussion here. And first and foremost, I would like to invite Councilperson Bain to come up. She is our liaison to the Planning Commission, and say a few words.
Good evening, not council members, chair and commission members. Just want to do a quick introduction, won't take a lot of your time tonight. Just want to let you know I am your new liaison. I am here to help you if there are things I can do to assist and as issues are coming up and things are kind of in this handoff that we do between your commission and council. I am happy to serve in that capacity. You should have my contact information. Feel free to reach out at any time. Just also want to pass on the public's thanks. I say all of the time that you have the hardest job in the city. And we'll repeat some of the comments that we made in council when Chairperson Gerard spoke to council a couple of months ago about the level of technical expertise that you all have, the depth of conversation that is had at this commission. And you heard some thank yous tonight, and I don't think you hear it enough. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for serving the city. And if I can be of assistance, happy to do it. If you have any questions for me now, happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, feel free to reach out.
Any questions? We look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Anything else in the other?
Can I ask just one simple question?
One. You only get one.
I said I was done.
And then you have to
Because-
wait.
You're already way past.
I probably should have said this earlier when we were doing because to me, those 5 motions could be very confusing and what it really means and how it's going to be interpreted. And because I'm very sensitive to criticism, I need to know, do you have enough information of the findings for what we did to present it to the council without us doing anything further?
Yes. I mean, it's basically, there's some legal nuances there that I'm sure I missed as far as the exact wording. But I'm confident that, our city attorney has the exact language. And, as long as the motion contain the words consistency, the land parcel, consistency with the comprehensive plan, I think the plan commission's covered.
Any other business to come? Eric?
I wanted to have a little discussion on the recent proposed zoning text amendment that we had. And I'll apologize to members of the commission. It might take me a little while to go through this. But I first wanted to address and just kind of recap for those in the audience of all the things that we did and read and went over and discussed. It was first presented to us at the January 10th Planning Commission meeting, which had 13 pages of documentation. Staff outlined basically what it was, 8 words. A public hearing was held. Not a single person spoke against it. And it was a unanimous vote following relatively short discussion. Then at the February 12th City Council meeting, I read 17 pages of documentation. The council decided to hold a public hearing at a future meeting and delay the process. It went to a February 26th City Council meeting in which we had 25 pages of documentation that I also read. At that meeting, and I had to go back at the meeting and I watched the video, I think, twice to make sure I had all this right. But the comments and concerns from council members and the mayor were as follows. Ben Winnick, our mayor, had said he was concerned about the effect on other areas of the city, effect on other parcels, effect on neighborhoods, middle of the comp plan update, community awareness, wanted additional feedback, had questions about horses being on the property. Staff had noted it right in that meeting that it would continue to be a non-conforming use, suggested a conversation with Planning Commission, questioned if it was spot zoning, and said staff should do their job in relation to providing answers to various questions brought forward. Ed's comments were effect on affordable housing, concerns they could tear barns down in the future, unknowns, and that was relatively vague. He felt they had a gun to their head, noted positive comments about project in general, and wanted more time to investigate impact in overlay district. Mara's comments were noted criteria for consideration were met, and she didn't personally have concerns. Although she did discuss the overlay district potential, which was prepared or presented at that meeting or slightly before that. And the attorney noted during that meeting that they would want to review that before it was discussed. Sam noted that this would go through a CUP process, and that would be an avenue to address many concerns. And former Councilmember Mike Freer had said that he agreed that some criteria were met, others not. And note, only one criteria needs to be met for us to consider and push something like this forward. Ultimately, the motion was that, and this was very specific, it was staff to review the impact, especially with regard to affordable housing, explore an overlay district, add more public conversation, including engagement with social media. The only dissenting vote in that was Mr. Freer, who had stated in that meeting that his premise was that he believed that that conversation should happen in the greater or larger, more broad conversation of the comprehensive plan review. And he dissented on that with noting that he would be in full support at that point in time. It is the one and only legitimate reason I heard through the entire process of a reason why somebody could say that they would be against that. And it's a philosophical reason that I differ on, and obviously this commission that attended both of our votes disagreed with. It then came back to the Planning Commission on March 14th, where we had 25 more pages of documentation we read. 100% of the public hearing comments were in support. Every council directive for Planning Commission was considered and addressed. Every single one was either addressed in the staff reports and either point blank told us this is not a concern, or it was discussed at the Planning Commission level. I recapped it before I made the motion. The one thing that did not happen was Mayor Ben Winnick had suggested a conversation with Planning Commission. He was at this meeting. He did not hold a conversation with us. As I recall, he didn't say one word to the Planning Commission in that public hearing or in any other format that we would have traditionally let him speak at our meeting. Nor did he return my phone call prior to that meeting, because I did reach out to him and I did want to understand what any concerns might be so that I could address those behind the scenes if necessary. At the April 9th City Council meeting, there was 35 additional pages of documentation. And Ben said at that meeting, while voting, what commissioners talked about was different than council, and went on to allude that there was still many unanswered questions. With regard to the zoning text amendment, while I respect the decision, is in the power of the council and the mayor. And sometimes we disagree on things, and I understand that, and I've called out other commissioners when we've had the conversation of, it went to council and they decided something different, and I said, hey, that's their power. What I won't stand for is our mayor telling us we're not doing our job. What I won't stand for is our mayor telling our staff they didn't do their job. His concerns on other areas of the city, other parcels, other neighborhoods were all extensively reviewed in the meeting agenda packets at both the Planning Commission and City Council levels. His concern with regard to community awareness was made. Several community meetings were held along with numerous public hearings and comment opportunities. Each of these provided overwhelmingly support in favor of the text amendment. He suggested a conversation, didn't return a call. He didn't talk to us. Economic impact concerns were amply addressed. The one thing I did state in the conversation when I made the motion was that I didn't believe the economic impacts. They were amply addressed. I just don't necessarily believe that they would have been as fulfilling as others might believe. I also noted that I didn't think it mattered because it was an issue of freedom. The consideration of an overlay district was researched, and it was clearly stated in the staff report that it was something infeasible. He had the opportunity to ask staff for additional details. He had the opportunity. He chose not to take it. He chose to vote no. That's on him. That's not on us. I read 115 pages of documentation, sat through hours of public comments, reached out and engaged with stakeholders in our community, and spent 50 to 60 hours researching and preparing for a decision on changing 8 of the 100,417 words in our zoning text. I did my job. Our comprehensive plan update has a mission statement. This is the proposed one that we're looking forward to. Has a mission statement reading, Forest Lake is known for its natural resources and outdoor recreation. The city's overall vision is to serve as a regional hub. And then it goes on. To me, a regional hub means that we go beyond welcoming, regionally impacting projects, but we should be championing those types of facilities to consider and ultimately choose Forest Lake. This was one that chose us, and sadly, a few members on our council refused to even find a way to say, yes, we'll look at this particular opportunity. Thank you, members.
Any other discussion? Dennis?
Can I just share a little quick anecdote here? I had opportunity, I was approached by some people that I have known, I would say casually, for a number of years, and he reached out to me because he was looking for some architectural services, and a week ago, last Wednesday, I spent a good part of the day with them. Guess what the first topic was that came up? What's going on in Forest Lake? What I want to say to the leadership of our community, they think they're doing something in this little room here that nobody else knows about. Sorry, the word's already out. It's already out.
Any other discussion? Donovan, our next meeting is?
Is May 9th.
Thank you. Hearing nothing else, the chair is looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all for attending.
I know you're not done.